Leroy! Yes! What's going on, everybody? It's Tuesday night. It's 10 o'clock Central Time. We got UFC 286 coming up this Saturday. Smoking jacket, check. Cold beverage, check. Statistics and analytics, check. Notes on 15 fights that are happening this Saturday, check. Well, if we got all those check marks, you know what that means, everybody. It means it's time for Just a Tip with me, your host, Uncle Weezy. Thank you for joining me. This is what we do every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Central Time. We break down all of these fights from a statistical and tape study perspective. We find the angles that we can bet so that we can stack cash tickets like flapjacks. And we always finish with Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. The ass shaving of the week is on an absolute tear right now. I think we've got 5 in a row, dominant performances, most of them finishes. And we're looking to keep that going this week. But this week was really tough because I didn't want to give you anything that was like minus 300 or worse. And that's like half the fights. So, and then the other fights are women's fights, which I am not picking with confidence anymore for the rest of my life, maybe. But we got a really good card to break down here. We got some interesting stylistic matchups. We've got some debuting fighters. We've got a bunch of hometown fighters, as this card will be taking place in the United Kingdom. And a lot of these fighters, almost all of them, as a matter of fact, are European or specifically from the UK. So we're going to have a lot of fighters that are making long trips to get over there, and we have to be very aware of that. And there are some very wide, very juiced up lines right now, so we've got to be aware of that as well. But we're going to do what we always do about this time, break down some fights, enjoy ourselves, get yourself a cold beverage if you haven't already, because we've got a lot of work to do, everybody. The Patreon is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Right now, I've almost got 50 members. I want one more Patreon member by the end of this stream tonight. I want to log off on this stream and find that one of you watching. It felt like giving your Uncle Weezy $5 a month for the incredible stats that you see on the screen here every week for free on YouTube. So I want one more Patreon member. The address is right there, scrolling along the bottom of the screen. The best analytics and statistics in the game for the price that I am selling these for. Great stuff. Distance striking numbers. We got strength to schedule numbers, grappling, striking, experience, measurables. And then we've got the prop template, which is something that we use in order to find data-driven advantages over house lines. And it is a fantastic tool. The people who have already purchased that will attest to it, that this is the best way and the cheapest way to get the best analytics and statistics that will help you with your over-under betting. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. When you go and you look at my performance on Bet MMA Tips, you're going to see me getting my ass shaved in parlays, me doing okay in straight fight picks, and me absolutely waxing the bookies on props. And the reason is that you have to have a method. You have to have a method to the madness on how you pick your bets. And my prop template, and I'm tooting my own horn here, but I don't give a shit. If you don't like it, you can just leave, because this prop template that I have is the best analytics tool for over-under betting that is available right now on the internet, bar none. So I want one of you signing up for that Patreon by the end of the show today. But let's see who is here hanging out with us in the chat. We're going to talk really quickly, though, about last week. Up 3.25 units. Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week was Carl Williams to shave the ass of Lucas Bresky, which he did. 30-26 unanimous decision on 2 cards, 30-27 on the other one. Really dominant performance, wrestling heavy. Carl got tired, which is something that I haven't seen him do on his regional scene footage. I'm blaming the adrenaline dump and the debut for that. But other than that, man, it was a dominant performance. 5-unit max bet cashed, a 1-unit parlay with Carl Williams' money line and Bruno Silva's money line cashes, a half-unit play on Jonathan Martinez to win by decision cashes, And unfortunately, a 2.5 unit play on the Alexander Romanov money line made me look like a total prick. Yeah, Romanov went out there, got his absolute ass kicked by Alexander Volkov, and it wasn't even close. There was one horrible fence grab that prevented a takedown, but outside of that fence grab, man, it was all Volkov, and he made it look very easy. So up 3.25 units. Definitely up a good amount of units over the last 3 cards combined. Looking to keep that momentum going here into the plus for the year after a little bit of a losing streak early there in January and February. So let's keep it rolling, you guys. Let's make some money. What's going on with you guys in the chat? As we got the first one in the room, I believe, is my guy Mushroom saying, "Oi, yes, what's up, Unc? 4 more sleeps until violence. Let's fucking go. Let's get it, Mushroom." We got Lou Betya, friend of the show, in the room saying, "In honor of Yanal Ashmoz fight week, oi." What's up, Lou? It's good to see you in here. And we've got DJ in the room saying, "Oi, let's stack him fatter than Romanov's borscht belly this week, Unc. Let's get it, man." If it weren't for Romanov having that horrible day, if he would have found a way to win that fight, man, it would have been up over 8 units this week. So I'm really disappointed that he did not come to get the job done. But you know, it is what it is. This is the game we play. And as long as we make more than we lose every week, it's a good week. So DJ saying shalom to Lou in the chat. We've got JSJ in the room saying, "Oi, what's up, Unc? Watching probability. Couldn't believe how badly overpriced the unders are this week. Got to attack some overs." Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. You'll see, Jazz, when you see the track bets at the end of the show, that they opened up a lot of fights at 1.5 that should have been 2.5s, and completely overpriced all the violence lines. And the one thing that I've found is that I tend to narrative talk about whenever you've got a local crowd, an Australian crowd, a United Kingdom crowd, you got the crowd fired up, and that's supposed to fire up the fighters, but it's also in a bigger cage, and it's harder to finish fights in the bigger cage because when you do get into trouble, there's more room to run, there's more time to recover, there's less places to hide in that small cage, and it's easier to cut people off, and especially for wrestlers to go out there and get the job done. But in the bigger cage, some of these fights do tend to go over. You look at those Australian fights that happened a couple of weeks back, and the underbetters got absolutely smashed, because Jim Cruton, Menafield went over, Prado and Malarkey went over. Even like Tyson Pedro's fight went over. So there were a bunch of fights that were supposed to go under that didn't. And sometimes I blame the big cage for that. So, and also I think some people fight a little bit more cautious in front of the big crowd because they just want to win. They don't want to get embarrassed out there. They don't want to make mistakes. So yeah, I'm attacking those overs this week, and you'll definitely see that, Jazz, when I put the track bets up at the end of the show. Pumped to see Sam Patterson make his debut. Trains at my local gym. Dude is a monster when it comes to using his size and length. I can't wait to talk about Sam Patterson. Sean V saying, "What's up to Lou and to Mushroom?" Shalom, says Lou Betcha. We got Cole Stein in the room saying, "Weezy, let's stack some pay-per-view tickets. Let's get it, man." Cole Stein says, like flapjacks. We got JSG saluting in here. What's up, dude? We got Sean V saying, "Weezy 2024. We got the Cuban Assassin in the room saying, "Weezy Weez, what it do? Let's get that cheese." Is it just me or whenever you, Mark Smith, Chris Tione, or Jacob Montalvo is the refs, fuckery is not far away? Yeah, with Montalvo, you've got him standing fights up that have no business being stood up. I kind of like Tione. Mark Smith makes like huge errors, and whenever he makes those errors, they absolutely benefit fighters. Was it Mark Smith this week that let Turkali get away with like 37 fence grabs? Was that Smitty in that fight? Because that was unbelievable. And then also, Keith Peterson won't stop a fight to save his life and won't take a point usually to save his life. But when he does, he gets somebody out of the position that they just really worked very hard to earn. Yeah, get some help, Keith Peterson. Get some help, Mark Smith. And definitely get some help, Jacob Montalvo. And because it's in the UK, we might see Montalvo. And if he does, you don't want a good wrestler being reffed by Jacob Montalvo because he's horrible. We got Daz Files saying, oi, 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 what's up, Daz Files? We got Neil Sland in the room saying, oi, Weezy, first time live greetings from the Netherlands. Appreciate you, Mr. Land. Thank you for hanging out with us. Sean V saying, Aldridge just didn't show up. Take no shame in that pick. That was not the JJ from the Blanchfield fight. Yeah, that was weird. That was just weird that she found a way to lose to Ariane Lipski, but that's the fight game, and that's women's MMA for you in a nutshell. Jenna Marie is in the room. What's happening, Jenna? Good to see you in here. We got Silky B saying, yeah, what's up, man? We got PSSA 31, Jacques Tits, analysis time. You got that right. Rest in peace, Jacques Tits, one of the great geometry professors of all time. We got Nigel Lee in the room saying, what's up, Mushroom and Daz, Uncle Weezy, and the rest of the chat. Good to see you in here, man. We got Ice Viking saying, hey, Weezy, thank you for all your hard work, brother. Mind your manners today, Sean V. Sean saying, what's up to Nigel. We got Mushroom MMA. We got Daz saying, what's up. Nigel saying, what's up to Sean. We got Nigel saying, I told you I was going to be laughing at everyone that bet on the Lipski fight. Told you all to stay away. I couldn't help but put JJ Aldrich by decision in my greasy four-legger this week. So that one really hurt. Yeah, true, Nigel, for sure. We got, oh, yes, what's up, Weezy in chat saying, my guy, Victor De Jesus, good to see you, Victor, up in here. We got Bradley Pear in here saying, new to this channel, appreciate you, Bradley, thank you for checking in. Can't wait to break down these fights with you today. We got Ice Viking in here saying, Nigel Lee, a.k.a. so you're laughing at a Lipski decision bet. Laugh away. MD Terp, what's up? Saying, please, Uncle Weezy, no Juliana Miller plus minus 400 in your parlay. Let us learn from JJ last week and Loopy last year. Yeah, dude, it's not going to be in the parlay this week. But, you know, the fight doesn't go to decision, might be in the parlay, depending on what else I find. But that is going to be a tracked bet for me this week because Juliana Miller and Veronica Hardy fights do finish inside the distance quite often. We've got Nigel Lee saying, Ice Viking, that was a great bet. Referring to the Aldrich bettors at that juiced line. Congrats on that bet. Yeah, dude. I mean, that was the Aldrich bettors that really got smoked, man. We got Chaz Bono's manly beard in the room saying, I'm setting a record for Bellator betting. 1-25 since October last year. 25 draws. We got Tone in the room saying, oi. We got Jay Rich in the room saying, Flapjacks and Dream, let's get it. We got Jester saying, what's up, Weezy? We got M.A. Liren in the room saying, oi, making it live again. Thanks for your work, Unc. We got Edwin Gutierrez in the room saying, gang. We got Jester in the room saying, Tyone reminds me of a really kind grandfather. Yeah, me too, man. He seems like a decent guy, dude. JSJ saying, I'll have to die knowing I unsuccessfully faded Ariane Lipski. Dude, I actually did it too. I faded Ariane Lipski, Jazz, against Mandy Bohm. I actually bet Mandy Bohm against Ariane Lipski. And I'll tell you something, dude. Jazz just said really prophetic words. He's making Confucius look like an absolute bitch right now. Because when you bet against Ariane Lipski and fuck it up, it's time to look in the mirror and really have a discussion with yourself about how you got to this point in your life, how you're going to dig yourself out of this hole, how you're going to apologize to your friends and family for the person that you've become, and how you're going to come back from this. And let me tell you something. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. You got to love yourself first. That's the first step. You got to look in the mirror and you have to say, I bet against Ariane Lipski and failed, but it doesn't make me a bad person. It makes Mandy Bohm a bad person. Okay? It makes JJ Aldrich a bad person. It's everybody's fault but ours. That's how we learn to love ourselves again. That's how we learn to go forward after making a horrible mistake in our lives. And once we do that, we can go on living our lives again. So Jazz, I appreciate that. These are the life lessons that we have to learn in order to make sure that we make the best use of our time on this planet. Thank you, Jazz. We got Victor De Jesus, or Daz saying what's up to Victor. We got the Cuban assassin saying Aldrich fight kits need to be on clearance at the UFC store. You got that right, man. We got M.A. Lerone saying, can I please get your early take on Sterling Cejudo May 6th? Maybe for Ask Thou Weezyeth on Twitter. Yeah, man, that's going to be wild. I can't wait for that fight. Seeing Triple C in there against Aljamain Sterling, that's going to be wild. I'll have to really kind of look at things, but I mean, I'm leaning Cejudo. Cejudo is so good. And, we saw Peter Yan out wrestle Aljamain Sterling the first time that they met up. And if Yan can do that, Cejudo certainly can. And, I know that Cejudo's got an excellent ground game, good submission defense. So if he can out wrestle Aljamain and throw a ton of volume on the feet, is a very good kickboxer too. But he's going to be much, much, much smaller and much shorter than Aljamain Sterling. So it's a very interesting stylistic matchup. But, I mean, if we get the old Triple C, he finds ways to win, man. And I mean, like, that guy beat Demetrius Johnson, the prime Demetrius Johnson. So, I mean, like, there's really nothing that he can't do, in my opinion. And I can't wait for that fight. We got Nigel Lee laughing in there, and we got Jess saying, don't worry, Weezy, I'm getting help. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, they're actually giving you money to take one plus free shipping and handling for the JJ Aldrich fight kit. Kevin saying, hello, everyone. My name is Kevin, and I am not a bad person. Dana White is. We got JSJ saying, Cejudo at plus money against any 135er is extremely tempting, and I couldn't agree more with that. Big Capper in the room saying, Jafel Filho thoughts. Well, we're going to talk about that one, but my thoughts is that when I watched him on film, that I was impressed. Plain and simple. And one of my rules is that you don't lay like minus 250, minus 300 in a striker versus striker matchup or in a grappler versus grappler matchup. Because both fighters are going to get the fight that they want. Both fighters thrive when they get the fight that they want. And you just don't want to be the one laying juice in that spot. So minus 800 on Muhammad Mokaev versus a guy in Filho who has a tendency to get to people's backs and find chokes from anywhere is a very, very dangerous option, in my opinion. And I might take a small little stab on Jafel Filho here, but we'll talk about that later. Yes, I would suggest leaving chalky women's favorites out of your parlays. Don't be surprised if Juliana Miller ruins your day. Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, and Big Capper saying Jafel Filho by sub, play it plus 2,000. I might do that. That's a tenth of a unit, that's not bad to get 2 units. And we got the MMA Jesus in the room. What's up, Dev? Good to see you here. You guys, we got a lot of work to do, so let's get right into it. I'll bring up my banners here. I'll bring up my notes, and we're going to start with talking about Juliana Miller versus Veronica Hardy. We've got the stats up on the screen. These stats are available at Uncle Weezy's Patreon. And I'm telling you guys, I want one of you to sign up for the Patreon. $5 a month. It's the least you can do to help out your Uncle Weezy. I'm destitute over here. That prick Romanov ruined my week. Well, I mean, I made money, but let's just pretend that I'm destitute and I'm not wearing a designer smoking jacket here. And sign up for the damn Patreon. But Juliana Miller, the killer, minus 450, going up against Veronica Macedo, who is now Veronica Hardy, the wife of former UFC fighter Dan Hardy, at plus 350. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 155. All lines that you see on the ticker on Just a Tip with Uncle Weezy are sponsored by betonline.ag. That is the book where I get all the lines from and roll them here on the screen. So just be aware, these are betonline.ag lines. And yeah, so this is going to be an interesting fight here. Let me get to my notes. Let me scroll up through all 24 pages of them. And we're going to first start talking about Juliana Miller here. Killer Miller is a fun young prospect to watch in the flyweight division. She comes from a grappling base, and she's got great conditioning. She's got great heart. She's got durability, toughness, meanness, and that combination of attributes combined with her very aggressive style everywhere in the fight makes her a very dangerous opponent. Julie only has 4 pro fights and 33 minutes in the pro cage, but she was in the Tough House, and that's a crash course in MMA. So she was able to have the unique opportunity to prove a lot in a short period of time. On the feet, Julie is very poor defensively. She's very easy to hit, and her striking isn't fundamentally sound. However, she always pressures. She can trust her chin, and she's always throwing. Her punches come straight down the pipe, and she throws a lot of volume while coming forward, and she uses her striking to set up her entries into the clinch. The clinch is where Julie gets all of her takedowns. And in order for Julie to be at her most dangerous, she needs to get the fight to the ground at all costs. Once the fight is on the ground, Julie is very aggressive. She constantly hunts for submissions, whether she's on top or on the bottom, and she lands ground and pound and advances position when she's on top, and does so effectively enough that she can finish fights with the ground and pound or with the submissions that are set up by the ground and pound. What Julie lacks in technique, she really more than makes up for with heart, pace, pressure, and a fight finishing mindset. Julie still has a long way to go, but she has the right base to grow into a very difficult fighter to deal with in the cage. And she'll be squaring off against Veronica Hardy here. Now, we haven't seen Veronica Hardy in about 3 years in the UFC, but she's still only 27 years old. She has an 11 fight pro career, a 6-4-1 record in 7 years as a pro. We haven't seen Veronica in the cage since the Bay Malecki fight, which was almost 3 years ago. Therefore, there's a ton of missing information as to what we can expect for her after this layoff. Here's what we do know, though. Veronica is a 5-time U.S. Taekwondo champion as a youth. On the feet, she has that traditional martial arts style. On her toes, bouncing up and down, darting in and out, throwing punches and kicks with her power side. She's a southpaw, and she uses her lateral motion to circle the cage and also draw her opponents into her left side power strikes. Veronica is a BJJ black belt, and she's aggressive, going for submissions on the ground. She is submission over position, though, and tends to get into scramble heavy wars on the ground. And against an opponent like Miller, that would be a horrible idea. The takedown defense, especially in the clinch, isn't good either. And that's really bad news as well for Hardy here. She could have made big improvements to her defensive grappling during her time away. This could be interesting. However, things Hardy does poorly, Miller does them well. So I don't like this matchup for Veronica unless she can use her lateral movement to kind of keep this fight standing in that striking range. So Juliana Miller, in summary here, is six months younger than Veronica, but she's 3 inches taller and she's got a 2-inch reach advantage. So nice measurables advantages there. She's got a 100% finish rate as a pro, and she's got tremendous conditioning and heart. She's the far better submission grappler, in my opinion. Her ground game is fantastic, whether she's on top or on the bottom. She is incredibly aggressive wherever she is, with ground and pound and submissions. Hardy's the more experienced fighter overall and at the UFC level, with 7 more pro fights and over 90 more minutes in the pro cage. She's the better, faster striker and will be harder to find on the feet. Veronica has fought the far better brand of competition in her career. It's hard to know what Veronica will look like after 3 years off, but she was already a solid fighter who could find moments anytime in the fight with her striking and submissions, but she hadn't shown the ability to be able to win minutes at this level in her previous run in the UFC. Miller's got a functional style that suits her well. She pressures on the feet. She uses that pressure and pace and volume to tire her opponent out, work her way into the clinch, where she gets all of her takedowns. And once she gets on top, she is shown to be very dangerous there, always advancing position, always throwing ground and pound, and hunting for submissions. I like this spot for Miller, but at the current line, it's way too much juice to lay. In the case that Hardy potentially did make huge improvements in her time away from the cage. That being said, I am going to go with Juliana Miller to finish this fight by submission late in the fight. I'm looking for Miller to win by third round submission here. But I feel like there is a path for Veronica Hardy. There are some big holes in Juliana's game. Number one, she gets all of her takedowns from the clinch. So if you can just avoid the clinch, you're going to maybe be able to keep this fight standing. And if you keep the fight standing and you can deal with the predictable pressure that Juliana Miller is going to bring by dancing laterally, by keeping distance with kicks, that's a way to win minutes against her. You know, in addition to that, you can take Juliana Miller down, and if your submission defense is good and you can keep her from sweeping you, you can win minutes that way. And, you know, I mean, but the best way to do it would be to keep the fight standing and to, you know, have her walk into big straight shots down the pipe when she does pressure. But Juliana gets her takedowns from the clinch, and Veronica Hardy is terrible at defending takedowns in the clinch. So I think Juliana is going to find her way into that clinch. I think she's going to get takedowns. And I think the longer this fight goes, she's going to become more and more dangerous. And I think that ground and pound is going to set up a rear naked choke late in the fight. So let's go to the Tapology page here, and I will give you all these predictions fight by fight. So let's go to make picks. And for the curtain jerker, we're going to start out with the Hardy Miller fight, and we're going to pick Killer Miller to win by third round submission. But it'll be interesting to see how Veronica Hardy looks after all this time away from the cage. All right. The next fight that we're going to talk about, Jai the Black Country Banger Herbert at plus 167, squaring off against Ludovic Klein at minus 192. The fight doesn't go to decision, up at minus 190 for this fight. So this is a fun one, man. The Black Country Banger, always in fun fights, with the exception of the Kyle Nelson fight, which sucked. And I lost money on the fight, doesn't go to decision there. But still, all other Jai Herbert fights are pretty damn fun. So Jai, we'll start talking about him. He's a huge lightweight. He's 6'1". He's got a 77-inch reach, and he has a 12-4 pro record in 16 fights and 118 minutes in the pro cage. 10 of Jai's 12 pro wins come inside the distance. He's got 9 knockouts and 1 submission, and Jai's been finished in all 4 of his pro losses, with 3 of those 4 finishes coming by way of knockout. So at 14 of 16 fights finishing inside the distance, it's safe to say that Jai is a killer-be-killed fighter, and he's definitely at his most dangerous when he's on the feet. He uses his length well by throwing lots of kicks, and his 1-2s come straight down the pipe with power and precision. Jai also uses his length well in the Muay Thai clinch, especially with his knees. Everywhere the fight goes on the feet, Jai is dangerous, and he shows the ability to land big shots and win moments. Jai also throws a lot of volume on the feet, where he's got a positive 4.23 distance strike attempts per minute differential and a positive 0.43 distance striking differential. As we can see here, he lands 4.44 and absorbs 4.01 per minute. Jai has landed 3 knockdowns at the UFC level, and he's absorbed 2. Jai's 51.6% striking defense leaves a lot to be desired, and Jai doesn't react well to low leg kicks with those neuro-ass legs that he has. One of Jai's biggest problems thus far has been that even though Jai does his best work on the feet, Jai's fights have only taken place at distance striking range a little over 41% of the time. Jai's been taken down 8 times on 18 attempts, so his takedown defense is only 55%, and he's being controlled for 37% of his UFC cage time on aggregate. So if his opponents don't like how it's going on the feet, they can win minutes on the ground against him. Jai's attempted only 1 takedown thus far in the UFC, so obviously he wants to keep fights standing, and he needs to do a better job of keeping fights standing. And then for Ludovic Klein, he's a well-rounded fighter hailing from the proud nation of Slovakia. He has 23 professional fights. He's got a 19-4 pro record, and 16 of those 19 wins are coming inside the distance. And he's an equal opportunity finisher at 8 knockouts and 8 submissions. On the feet, Klein is a very dangerous southpaw striker. He's known for his fast and powerful left head kick, and he's gotten knockouts with that over Shane Young, over Lucas Sajewski, Krzysztof Klejcek, and João Rodriguez. Klein does a great job of counter-striking, and everything he throws is fast and sharp. He really is a sniper with his striking. He's got meat and potatoes weapons, but he does flash the occasional highlight reel attacks that he sets up well using his hands. Klein also has really nice teep kicks to the body that help him maintain range when his opponent isn't really pressuring. He's got knockdowns in 2 of his 5 UFC fights against Jones with a nice 4-piece combination that he threw as a combo. And also against Shane Young with a 1-2 that he set up with a left head kick. Klein's 3-0 in the UFC when he outlands his opponents at distance, and he's 0-2 when he doesn't. Klein's done a decent job of winning control time positions at the UFC level. He's got 4 takedowns and has only yielded 1, and he's showing 87.5% takedown defense on 8 attempts against. So he's stuffed 7 of 8 takedowns that he's seen. So he's got really good takedown defense, and he's gotten a couple of his own too. Ludovic's winning 73.5% of the control time positions he's been in, and he gets 1.02 takedowns per 15 minutes, but he's only gotten takedowns in the Trezano fight, and he actually lost that fight despite going 4 for 7 on his takedown attempts and getting 3.5 minutes of control time. So in summary here, Jai is the much taller and longer man. He's got a 6-inch height and a 5-inch reach advantage because Ludovic Klein has always been a featherweight, and now he's just now moving up to lightweight. So this is going to be a tricky challenge for him, because you don't see guys like this at lightweight, and now you're moving up and you're getting one of the biggest, longest lightweights in a division that you're already one of the smallest guys in. Jai is going to throw a lot more volume at distance, and he uses his length well, and that's going to be important against a 5'7" Ludovic Klein here when Jai Herbert is 6'1". Jai's landing a knockdown, So Jai throws a lot more volume at distance, and he uses his length well, and he's good with his knees when he's in the clinch. Jai is landing a knockdown on 3.6% of the distance strikes he lands. So he's got fantastic power for the weight class, and he's got 3 knockdowns in 5 UFC fights. Jai's definitely faced the better brand of competition overall, according to my metrics, and he's only lost to studs like Trinaldo, Topuria, and Moicano. Ludovic is 6 years younger. He's got 7 more pro fights and almost 50 more minutes in the pro cage, and he's got 15 more minutes in the UFC cage as well. Klein is much more accurate at the UFC level, and he's also been more durable. Ludovic has 1 more control time position, so I would say he's the far more likely fighter to win minutes in the grappling exchanges, as Jai has 55% takedown defense and allows 37% control time to his opponents on the aggregate. Ludovic's got the better UFC wins. I'm going with Ludovic to win inside the distance here. I can trust his durability more. He has 8 career wins by submission, and Jai's ground game is subpar. And Klein can mix in the takedowns if he has trouble closing the 5-inch reach disadvantage on the feet. Jai could win minutes on the feet, though, if he successfully maintains range and uses his kicks to score points, or, of course, he could land a big shot with that nice power he has. But I feel like Klein is more well-rounded, and he's got more paths to victory here. So I'm going to say Ludovic Klein is going to win this fight by 2nd round submission. So we're going to pick Klein here. We're going to say submission, and we're going to say round number 2. Jai's durability is one of the things that really bothers me here, but it could be interesting because, the plus money here is on Jai Herbert, and, Ludovic's going to have to fight smart. He's going to have to figure out ways to close that massive size difference and length difference that there is in this fight. So while I'm picking Klein, I'm not laying the juice on him. But I do think that the best bet for this fight, if you can get fight doesn't go to decision at -200 or better, over here, we see that Ludovic Klein has got 4 career losses. And if we look overall here for their losses, 50% of his losses by sub, 25% by KO. He's been finishing 3 of 4 losses. Jai Herbert's been knocked out in 3 losses and subbed in a loss. So in their combined 8 losses as professionals, 7 of those losses are inside the distance. So neither one of these guys has been particularly durable in their career, and they're both great finishers. 83%, 10 of 12 for Herbert, and we got 85% almost for Ludovic Klein. So I'm looking for this fight to finish inside the distance, and I think that fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200 or better. This could be a potential parlay piece this week. But yeah, we're picking Ludovic Klein to win by second round submission. But like I say, I'm not laying the juice on Klein here. I think that Herbert has definitely got paths to victory. The next fight that we are going to talk about is going to be Joanne Wood going up against Luana Carolina. We've got Joanne Wood minus 170, Luana Carolina plus 145. The fight doesn't go to decision. Big time plus money at plus 240 this week. And so let's first start talking about Joanne Wood here. JoJo is an 11-year veteran of the sport of MMA. She's got a 15-8 record as a pro with over 230 minutes in the pro cage. And she's got a 7-8 UFC record with over 150 minutes in the UFC cage. So she is definitely an experienced veteran. And at 37 years old, she isn't ancient yet. JoJo's lost 4 out of her last 5 fights, with the only win coming against Jessica Ai by a unanimous decision. JoJo does her best work winning minutes at striking range. She throws a whopping 19.53 distance striking attempts per minute at distance, and she lands 9.21 distance strikes per minute while only absorbing 5.82. So that's a distance striking differential of 3.39 for every minute that JoJo spends at distance. So she throws way more, she lands way more, and she just drowns her opponents in volume and finds ways to win minutes that way. She's even landed 3 knockdowns in 15 UFC fights, so she's flashed some power before as well. JoJo's won 51% of the grappling positions she's been in, while getting 1.53 takedowns per 15 minutes and allowing 1.24. JoJo has a 59% takedown defense, and her submission defense is straight ass. As 5 of her 8 losses are by submission in the UFC, and 5 of the 8 submission attempts JoJo has faced over her UFC career have been successful. And she's lost every single fight where her opponents have even attempted a submission. JoJo's wins, she's done a nice job of mixing in the wrestling with 14 of 28 on her takedowns, getting 30% control time, while outlanding her opponents at distance, 486 significant strikes to 292. JoJo's 7-3 when she doesn't get subbed in the UFC. Here are JoJo's last 7 opponents: Alexa Grasso, Taylor Santos, Lauren Murphy, Jessica Ai, Jennifer Maia, Andrea Lee, and Caitlin Chukagian. Only Lee out of that whole list hasn't had a title shot yet. And JoJo is facing Luana Carolina on Saturday. So Luana is a Muay Thai striker with 10 professional fights, half of them being at the UFC level. She has an 8-2 professional record with 3 wins coming inside the distance. She's got 2 knockouts and 1 submission. Luana is still only 29 years old, and she's got nice length for the division at 5'6" with a 69-inch reach. She hasn't been active as a pro, with only 10 fights in an 8-year career and only 5 fights since the May of 2019. We haven't seen Luana in a year since her KO loss via spinning back elbow to Meatball Molly, and that fight also took place in front of a hostile crowd in the UK, as will this fight against a Scottish fighter in Wood. Luana has been finished in both of her UFC losses. Lipsky subbed her with a bizarre knee bar, and Molly McCann absolutely destroyed her in front of a rabid crowd in London. All 3 of Luana's UFC wins are by decision, and Luana has outstruck her opponents at distance 132-94 in her 3 UFC wins, that is. And she was outstruck 72-49 in her 2 losses. Luana's got a positive 0.49 distance striking differential, and she throws almost 2 more distance strike attempts per minute in comparison to her opponents. So she does solid, effective work on the feet at range, as well as in the clinch with her knees and short elbows. Luana prefers to keep fights standing, as she has attempted 0 takedowns in her 5 UFC fights in almost 60 minutes in the UFC cage. She still has managed 16.2% control time for, while allowing 30.65% control time against. So she wins only 34.5% of the control time positions she's been in, but she's got 78% takedown defense on 23 attempts faced. So at 1.29 takedowns allowed per 15 minutes, she's right about where JoJo is in terms of takedowns allowed. Luana also gets 1.03 reverses per 15 minutes, and she's attempting 0.51 submission attempts per 15 minutes. So when the fight does get to the ground, Luana is aggressive with submission attempts, sweeps, and her get up game is good. So it's good to know that she won't rest there. Luana has faced a solid level of competition thus far in her 5 UFC fights against names like Meatball Molly McCann, Lupi Godinez, Poliana Botelho, Ariane Lipsky, and Priscilla Cachoeira. So in summary, JoJo is far more experienced. She's got 13 more professional fights, 10 more UFC fights, and almost 100 more minutes in the UFC cage. She's been the better finisher at the UFC level, and she does a fantastic job of winning minutes at distance with her volume and in the grappling by mixing in takedowns. JoJo's faced a much better level of competition overall and at the UFC level. Luana is 8 years younger. She's got a 4-inch reach advantage. And she's undefeated in decisions in the UFC at 3-0. So she's done a great job of winning minutes when she doesn't get finished. Luana also outvolumes and outlands her competition at range, but not at the same rate that JoJo does. Luana actually has the better UFC wins according to my metric. JoJo's 7 UFC wins are over ladies with a combined 23-33 UFC record, while Luana's 3 UFC wins are over ladies with a combined 8-9 UFC record. It's an interesting fight, and I think there are a couple of interesting bets here. First, 7 of 10 combined UFC losses for Luana and JoJo are finishes, and the fight doesn't go to decision is sitting at about plus 240 right now. Fat plus money number, and both ladies attempt submissions and have been subbed before. And JoJo might be on her way out and close to retirement here. This is a big step down in competition for JoJo, but Luana's over 7 years younger, has a 4-inch reach advantage, and it's a solid Muay Thai striker herself who might be landing the more eye-catching shots. So I don't hate a shot on the Luana Carolina money line at plus 165, but I'm probably not going to get there myself because it's a long flight from Brazil to the UK. She's coming off a serious knockout loss where she was like just sent to the land of wind and ghosts by a spinning back elbow by Molly McCann, and she did not wake up for a while. So it's been a year since we've seen Luana Carolina, and it was a year ago in the UK that she got knocked out. So, there's a lot of things going against her. Long flight, long layoff, coming off a knockout loss, hostile crowd in front of the Scottish fighter that's going to be fighting in the UK. So, but still, I think it's interesting. Laying minus 190 on JoJo Wood at this point in her career, I don't think is a good idea. And I also think I'm going to consider that fight doesn't go to decision for analytics and narrative reasons. And at the plus money on any women's underdog is never a bad look, especially when they're 7 years younger and have a 4-inch reach advantage. But with that, all that being said, I'm still picking Joanne Wood to win this fight by decision. She's just such a good minute winner at range. And, Luana Carolina doesn't do the things well that Joanne does poorly, which is wrestle and attempt submissions. I mean, well, she does attempt submissions, but she doesn't try to get the fight to the ground. So she would kind of need JoJo to take her down and do the favor of, getting it to the grappling where she could attempt subs. But I think that JoJo maybe gets the win here, maybe retires and, lives out the rest of her life knowing that she was one of the, good UFC fighters, 16 fights. She wins this one. She'll be 8-8 and one of the pioneers of the sport for women. So Best of luck to Joanne Wood. I think she gets the win here by decision. And we'll move on to the next fight, which is going to be, we got Jake White Kong Hadley going up against Malcolm X Gordon. Hadley right now minus 400. Gordon plus 300. The fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 260. So yeah, dude, it's definitely wow. Hang on just a sec, guys. Let me just I saw this in the chat here. My guy MMA Jesus saying Volkov cheated. He did cheat, man, with that cage grab, but outside of the cage grab, it was complete domination. Couch Warriors in the room saying what's good, fellas. MMA Jesus saying Weezy, great ass shaving call last week. Appreciate you, brother. That was a good win for Carl Williams. That dude's tape just blew me away, man. And then let's see here. Okay. All right. Yippee Kaye saying, Weezy, are you on Spotify? I am not, man. I am not on Spotify. And my guy Aaron here saying, bro, a stats professor. I have a stats degree, but I am not qualified to be a stats professor. Trust me on that. Okay, but yeah, we're going back to the Jake Hadley, Malcolm X Gordon here, and we're going to first start talking about our boy White Kong, Jake Hadley. Damn good young prospect out of Fearless MMA in Birmingham, England. He's 9-1 as a pro. 7 of his 9 wins coming inside the distance. 2 knockouts, 5 submissions. Pre-UFC, he was 8-0, and he was the EFC and the Cage Warriors flyweight champion. And in both of those title fights, he went the full 5 rounds in 25 minutes and earned unanimous decision wins. Jake's really well-rounded. He's got a functional stand-up game. He's fast. He throws in combination, and he keeps a high pace, and most importantly, he pressures. He does have a strange style of defending where he keeps his hands and right elbow high, and he shells up when his opponents throw, which means he leaves his body open to be hit, and he rarely counters. He kind of puts his hands up, and then he'll put that elbow up like this so that you could potentially break your hand on the elbow. But when you do that, you're just leaving the body open. So you can fake the overhand and go to the body and hurt him there. I'm waiting to see somebody actually do that because that's always how Jake Hadley has defended when he's been striking. Jake really does his best work on the ground, though. He chains submission attempts together from the top and from the bottom. He has 5 career wins by submission, and 4 of those are rear naked chokes because Jake does such a good job of getting to his opponent's back. Jake's dangerous wherever the fight goes. He's got great conditioning. He's been the full 5 rounds twice on the regional scene, won both of those fights by unanimous decision. His lone setback came against a really good fighter in Alan Nascimento, where Jake's willingness to play off his back and favor submission over position got the best out of him. And he was taken down twice and reversed 3 times. He gave up 9 minutes of 27 seconds of control time in a 15-minute fight. He gave up all 3 rounds on all 3 scorecards. But Jake is still getting better. He's a hard worker, and he's fighting at home in the UK. And that Nascimento win is the Nascimento loss is aging well. Nascimento's a guy who's got over 25 professional fights. He's an absolutely gigantic flyweight, and he's got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt training out of Shootbox, and he's been all over the regional scene fighting everybody. So, a guy like Jake Hadley, who took that fight when he wasn't even 26 yet, he's probably learned a lot from that. Now he's fighting in front of the home crowd again, and he's got a much more favorable matchup here against Malcolm X Gordon. Malcolm is a 32-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt out of Team Adrenaline in Canada. He's got 20 professional fights. He's got a 14-6 professional record, with 11 of those 14 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 5 knockouts and 6 submissions, and all 6 of his pro losses came inside the distance. And he's got 4 knockouts and 2 submissions to his credit there. Malcolm hates being hit, so he definitely prefers to grapple. Whether he's on top or the bottom, he's happier than he is than when he's standing, as evidenced by the fact that only 25.5% of his 36 minutes in the UFC cage have been spent at distance striking range. Excuse me. At range, Malcolm has had a negative 1.84 distance striking differential, and he's got 29.2% accuracy at distance and 48.5% distance striking defense. Even though these stats are only in a 9.23 minute sample size, they're still straight ass. Malcolm has landed 0 knockdowns and he's absorbed 1. 75% of Gordon's UFC cage time has been spent in control time positions. He's averaging 1.66 takedowns per 15 minutes, 0.83 submission attempts per 15 minutes, and 1.24 reverses per 15 minutes. So he's very active once the fight is on the ground. He's gotten 4 of the 13 takedowns that he's attempted, and his takedown defense has been absolutely terrible at 9.09% on 11 attempts against. So 10 of the 11 takedown attempts that Malcolm Gordon have faced have been successful. Malcolm wins 35% of the control time positions that he's been in thus far, so he isn't getting dominated when he's on the ground. And once the fight is there, Malcolm will be aggressive and look to finish the fight and also look to accumulate control time when he's on top. His wins are over lower-level opponents like the Bad Figgy and Dennis Bondar, and his losses have come to guys with a combined 10-2 record in the UFC in Muhammad Mokaev, Sue Maderji, and Amir Albazi. Jake is 6 years younger. He's a southpaw. He's got the better stand-up. He's got the better conditioning. Malcolm is a switch stance fighter with a 1-inch reach advantage. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's very aggressive on the ground, same as Hadley. I think Jake has Malcolm covered everywhere, though. He's younger. He's more battle-tested. He's a 2-time champ in EFC and Cage Warriors. He's the far more durable fighter as he's never been finished as a pro, while Gordon has been finished in all 6 of his professional losses. The submission game is on par with Malcolm's. His wrestling is better, and his stand-up is way better. As long as Hadley doesn't get caught in a submission, I think he finds a moment to finish this fight, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. Hadley inside the distance is the pick, and I'm going to say that he gets this one done by second-round knockout. So, Jake Hadley, Malcolm Gordon. Jake Hadley by KO in the second round. All right. Let me get a sip of my beverage. Whew. It's delicious. All right. The next fight is going to be the debut of Christian Leroy Duncan, and he's going to be squaring off against Dusko Todorovic. We got Christian Leroy Duncan, the favorite, at -205. Dusko plus 175. Fight doesn't go to decision. Juice to the tits at -350. Let's start talking about Christian Leroy Duncan. Very exciting prospect out of Gloucester, England. He's undefeated as a pro, 7-0 with 6 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 5 knockouts and 1 submission. He won the Cage Warriors middleweight championship against Jati Milan, and then he defended it against Marian Dimitrov. In addition to his pro experience, where he's 7-0, Christian has a decorated amateur career that spanned 23 fights over 4 years, where he went 17-6, and he's never been finished in his career as a pro or an amateur. Christian does his best work on the feet at range. He switches stances. He's got great footwork and a massive bag of tricks that he goes to, including lots of jump knees, spinning hook kicks, axe kicks, jumping roundhouse kicks, spinning elbows, and so on. He's flashy, he's powerful, and he's precise. 5 of his 7 pro wins are by knockout, and he gets them in different ways. What makes Christian such an exciting prospect is we've seen his opponents try to take him down and exploit his ground game, and he's shown that he's well-rounded and strong everywhere. He's got solid takedown defense and a good get-up game when he is taken down. He's faced Will Curry twice, Jati Milan, and Marian Dimitrov, and all of them had some success either in the clinch or on the ground against him, but none of them could lock up submissions or hold him down long enough to win large portions of the fight. Christian always found ways to get reverses, get back up, or threaten with submissions of his own, and since his conditioning has always appeared to be on point, he would always find success either counter grappling or just waiting for his opponents to tire out before getting takedowns of his own or just knocking his opponents out. Other than occasionally dropping around against really good grapplers, I haven't found any holes in this kid's game yet. He's only 27. He's getting better. He's well-rounded, and he's got good conditioning and flashy, powerful striking. There's really not a lot to dislike about this kid. And then we got Dusko, who's a well-rounded fighter out of Serbia. He's got a 12-3 pro record with 11 of his 12 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 8 knockouts and 3 submissions. He's 3-3 thus far in the UFC, and 5 of those 6 UFC fights have finished inside the distance. So Dusko's fights are violent. On the feet, Dusko switches stances. He's got good dexterity in his legs, so he can throw up head kicks with both legs and in both stances quickly. He keeps his hands down, and he relies mostly on head movement for defense, which doesn't work particularly well as he's been dropped 3 times in 6 UFC fights, and he tends to eat a lot of shots at distance. Dusko throws and lands about the same as his opponents do. He does tend to like to clinch up on the feet. He likes to be in the clinch. He'll work for takedowns in dirty boxing, and he tries to win minutes there by keeping his opponents back against the cage. Dusko does his best work on the ground when he's on top. That's when he's really good. He's heavy. He always looks to advance position, and he will be active with ground and pound looking to finish fights with it. The problem is he struggles to get takedowns. He only has 4 takedowns in 6 UFC fights, and that's on 18 attempts. So we're talking about a 22% takedown accuracy. It took a bad decision from Maki Pitolo to jump guillotine that got Dusko to the advantageous position that he used to finish that fight. And he got a takedown in the second against Daquan Townsend that he used to eventually finish that fight with ground and pound. But outside of that, he struggled to set up fight-ending or minute-winning sequences on the ground with his wrestling. Dusko's 3 wins in the UFC came over guys that had a combined record of 4-14. That's Daquan Townsend, Maki Pitolo, and Jordan Wright. But Dusko's UFC competition has a combined record of 15-19 overall. So the guys that he's losing to have a combined record of 11-5, and that's Hobocop, Chidi Njokuani, and Punahele Soriano. So he's lost to some really good guys, definitely some guys that have got some power and good striking on the feet, and good takedown defense as well. In summary, Christian Leroy Duncan is 1 year younger. He's 1 inch taller, and he's got the way better striking here at distance, in my opinion. Dusko's the far better top control and submission grappler here, and he will be at his most dangerous if he can get takedowns and work from there. I see Dusko clinching up early and trying to take Duncan to a place where he needs to struggle to find space and force him to grapple. I don't think he'll be able to do this for long stretches, though, and I see Christian eventually finding the big shot on the feet and closing the show with a highlight reel knockout. I don't mind a fight to start round 2 bet. It will be a sweat, but Dusko rarely fights his opponent's fight, so I think he tries to slow it down early in this one. I think that Dusko is going to shoot a takedown or try to get this into the clinch right away so that Christian doesn't get time to find his way into the striking range that he's comfortable in so that he can kind of start to draw from that massive bag of tricks that he has and start to really get to confuse Dusko on the feet. So, I think that this fight will go a little bit longer than people think. I think that under 1.5 at like minus 105 might be a little bit crazy here. Dusko's fights have finished inside the distance and violently quite a few times, but this is Christian Leroy Duncan's debut here. And, we got to see how he deals with the step up in competition. So, but I am picking Duncan, and I think that he gets it done by second round knockout. So Christian Leroy Duncan, KO, round 2. But if Dusko can get some takedowns and some top control time, man, he's going to be very dangerous. So we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more fights still to break down. 15 fight card. You want to talk about a nutcracker for a content creator like me, man. Try to break down 15 fights in less than a week, especially when these pricks pull this daylight savings shit and take an hour away from my week. My week is too important to have a 1 hour taken away from it, especially during a pay-per-view. So stop this shit. No more daylight savings time. Your Uncle Weezy's calling this shit right now. It stops fucking today. Here, the episode number 68 or 69 of Just the Tip, whatever it is, it stops today. Write it down. March 14th, Pi Day, 2023, the day your Uncle Weezy declared that this daylight savings time is a crock of shit and it no more happens ever again. Ever again. Fuck daylight savings time. So, yeah, all right, let's go. We got the next fight. Whew, this is a fun one. Lerone the Miracle Murphy going up against the Moscatino, Gabriel Santos. And let's see. We've got the line on this one is Lerone the Miracle Murphy sitting at -160. Moscatino +140. Fight doesn't go to decision, +100 right now. This is going to be a really fun fight. We haven't seen Lerone Murphy for a minute, and Gabriel Santos is taking this fight on short notice and flying all the way from Brazil to the United Kingdom. Very, very tough road to hoe. But let's talk about Lerone the Miracle Murphy first. He's a 31-year-old fighter out of the UK who's got good size for the division at 5'9" with a 73-inch reach. He's an undefeated prospect at 11-0-1. He's got 94 minutes in the pro cage. He's been inactive, though, as a pro, as he's only fought 12 times in almost 8.5 years, and he's only fought 4 times in the UFC since September of 2019. Lerone does his best work at range. He's long, rangy. He's got fantastic power. He uses his length well to maintain distance, and he boasts an airtight 69% distance striking defense, and he's only absorbing 2.54 distance strikes per minute. He's got a positive 0.65 distance striking differential, and he's landed and absorbed 1 UFC knockdown, and 2 of his 3 UFC wins are by knockout. The problem Lerone has is in keeping fights standing, as his fights have only been at distance striking range 50.7% of the time, and that's in the 39.53 minutes he's been in the UFC cage. And the reason for that is Lerone can't stop a takedown. He's got a terrible 37% takedown defense on 19 attempts against. He's allowing 4.55 takedowns per 15 minutes and over 40% control time. And he's only winning 18.5% of the control time positions that he's been in. So Lerone's fighting tough dudes. The guys he has beaten have a combined 20-14 UFC record. Ricardo Ramos, Douglas Silva de Andrade, and Makwan Amirkhani. And if he can keep fights standing, he'll continue to win moments and minutes at range, but he needs to shore up that takedown defense. The Moscatino, though, Gabriel Santos, is an undefeated pro prospect from Brazil, training out of Evolução Thai. He's 10-0. He's got 92 minutes in the pro cage in an 8-year career. So he's been very inactive, but he did turn pro at the age of 18. Gabriel has 3 wins by knockout, 4 by submission, and 3 by decision. He's the current LFA featherweight champion, having won the tournament they just had with wins over Marcio Barbosa and Jose Delano. His best weapons are his pace, pressure, conditioning, and durability. He has the durability to weather the storm when things aren't going his way. He has the pace and pressure to make up for his lack of striking defense, and he definitely gets better as the fight goes on by putting that pace on and slowly taking over the fight. As he stays at that pace, his opponents are unable to maintain. Gabriel does a good job of mixing in the wrestling, and when he gets on top, he does a good job of advancing position and getting to his opponent's back. He does occasionally get sloppy, though, and he will throw up subs from his back, but he also tends to get stuck there and lose minutes against good wrestlers and top control guys. Gabriel will always be in fun fights because of his high volume, low defense style, and that style is going to give certain fighters actually lots of problems. But in summary, Lerone Murphy's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He's got 4 more fights at the UFC level and 40 more minutes in the UFC cage. He's definitely the cleaner, more powerful, and far more defensively responsible striker, and he's faced and beaten a much better level of competition. Santos is 5 years younger and has the more dangerous top game, and wrestling, especially as Lerone has done such a bad job of stopping takedowns and has given up so many minutes on the ground to previous opponents. That being said, this is a tough road to hoe for Santos. Making his debut on 1 week's notice, flying from Brazil to the United Kingdom, cutting weight, and facing a tested veteran with power in Lerone Murphy. I don't think Lerone will get tired, and he's too much of a sniper, and Santos' striking defense is too bad for me to think that Lerone doesn't find a big shot here and get the KO late in the first or early in the second. I'm picking Lerone, the Miracle Murphy, to get the job done, and I'm going to say it's by first round knockout. So we've seen Gabriel Santos get absolutely sparked before, and his win over Santos's win over Marcio Barbosa, was a fight that probably should have been stopped. He was in all kinds of trouble. Osiris Maia could have stepped in at any time, and it would not have been a bad stoppage. But he allowed Santos to just take a horrific beating, and Barbosa gassed out, beating him up. And then eventually Santos got back into the fight. He got a takedown of his own at the end of the first round, got on top and spent a bunch of time there on top, and wound up getting a head kick knockout like 7 seconds into that second round. So Santos has got a ton of heart. He's got good durability. He will not quit on himself in there, and he will fight for your money. But my God, is this a tough order on 1 week's notice to make this flight, to make this weight cut, to make your UFC debut in front of a hostile crowd against a hometown guy. It's going to be tough, and I'm picking Lerone Murphy to get the job done here and win by first round knockout. All right. The next fight, the hype train, Muhammad Mokaev squaring off against Pastor Jafel Filho. Mokaev minus 800 on the money line. The comeback on Filho plus 550. Fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 180 here. Let me wet my whistle here a little bit. We're working hard here today, ladies and gentlemen. When you are a capper on a pay-per-view 15-fight week, you don't sleep much. You work really hard, and you watch hours upon hours upon hours of tape. I've written 24 pages of notes just for today's show, putting in the work for you guys, and I appreciate all of you that are watching right now. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and I'm still telling you guys, I want one more guy on my Patreon. I want 50 Patreon members by the end of this show. And I'm not letting any of yous leave until I get that one more member. So you're all locked in. None of yous can leave until we get the one more Patreon member. I'm not going to check, though. Anyway. All right. Let's start talking about Muhammad Mokaev here. Very hot young prospect. Originally from Dagestan, but he moved to the UK when he was very young. He's never lost a fight as an amateur or a professional. 23-0 as an amateur. 8-0 as a professional. Muhammad's well-rounded, and he's got great cardio. And it's his wrestling that makes him special. Mokaev has attempted 33 takedowns in only 30 minutes of UFC cage time. He's gotten 18 of those takedowns for a 54.55% takedown accuracy, and he's averaging 8.88 takedowns per 15 minutes. Almost 84% of his 30 minutes in the UFC cage has been spent in control time positions for or against, and Mokaev is winning over 87% of the control time positions that he's been in. So that is a very dominant statistic. It's very hard to find minutes in the cage versus Muhammad where someone is winning. Mokaev has only spent just under 5 minutes so far at distance striking range, but even there he's winning minutes and moments, as he's got a positive 1.63 distance striking differential, and he's even landed a knockdown. The kid's still only 22. He's never tasted defeat, and his conditioning is there to push the wrestling heavy pace as long as it needs to be pushed. So it already looks like he's going to be a serious problem in the flyweight division for many years to come. Jafel Filho is almost 30 years old. He has a 16-fight pro career with a 14-2 record, with 13 of those 14 wins coming inside the distance. 8 knockouts, 5 submissions. Is that right? It's 8 submissions and 5 knockouts. My bad. Jafel is a fantastic grappler, and he loves to finish fights with chokes. Jafel hasn't been very active as a pro, though, as he's only fought 16 times in over a 10-year career. And he took 2.5 years off between mid-2019 and the end of 2021. And he's only fought once since the beginning of 2022, and that was on Dana White Contender Series, where he earned a contract against Roybert Echeverria via left hook to ground and pound in the 3rd round. Jafel has a fantastic ground game. Whether he's on top or on the bottom, he's always aggressive and looking to get dominant positions where he can finish the fight. He hasn't lost since 2017. He's won 8 of his last 9 fights, all of them by finish. The striking is functional as well. He's landed a beautiful left hook that slept Echeverria on Dana White Contender Series. So Mokaev, though, he's 7 years younger than Jafel. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage, and he definitely has the wrestling advantage here. Mokaev also has 3 UFC fights, so it's safe to say he's faced and beaten a better level of competition. Jafel's got 6 more professional fights, and he's a BJJ black belt, so it might be safe to say that Jafel is the better submission grappler in this match. This is a grappler versus grappler matchup, the way I see it. So to lay minus 800 on Mokaev here makes absolutely no sense to me. I might take a small stab at the Filho money line here, as I could see him finding a path to win minutes or moments on the ground. If Mokaev makes mistakes like he did against Malcolm Gordon a couple of times and Jafel gets to his back, I think he's going to be in big trouble. I'm picking Mokaev to win this. I think he wins it by decision, but I think plus 550 on the Filho money line is very interesting as a potential small sprinkle here. But yeah, we're going to pick the hype train. Muhammad Mokaev, still only 22 years old. It's amazing. And his wrestling is absolutely phenomenal. So, I think that he's going to maybe do to Filho what he did to Charles Johnson and just absolutely drown him with wrestling and not allow Filho to find spots where his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will be dangerous. And maybe he can do that with his cage wrestling in particular. But yeah, I'm thinking Mokaev gets the job done here. But Jafel Filho is a very talented grappler, very good chokes, very good top control, and very good sweeps from the bottom as well. So, and from what I've seen from Filho's striking, it's functional, and we haven't seen much of Mokaev's striking, to be honest with you. So, yeah, maybe he's got a shot here. But yeah, Muhammad Mokaev by decision is the official pick, everybody. All right, next fight. Looking forward to this one, man. This is going to be a wild one. We got Sam Patterson at minus 270 squaring off against Red Fox, one of my favorite comedians, Yanal Ashmoz at plus 230, and the fight doesn't go to decision up at minus 210 here. Let me just check something out here, you guys. We got Josh Locks in the room. What's up, dude? We got Abraham Khan in the room saying I'm taking a dog shot on Jafel. I don't care. He's made me money in the past, and I don't like Muhammad talking about the shoulder. If he does have a shoulder injury, that is something very interesting here, especially when you're getting a guy in a grappler versus grappler matchup at plus 550. And my guy Victor De Jesus here with the sage words of wisdom, one of the members of my Patreon, saying, guys, sign up for the Patreon already. It's definitely worth it. And you just can't leave until you do anyway. So yeah, you have to sign up for it. Mokaev is 11 weeks from a separated shoulder. Takes longer than that when you're active in training, I would imagine. Yes. And my guy Strickland Burner in the room saying, what's up, Weezy? Yeah, thank you guys for hanging out here. Smash that like button. Smash that subscribe button. We got 76 of yous hanging out live here, and we're about halfway through the show right now, and we're going to start talking about Sam Patterson versus Yanal Red Fox Ashmoz. So let's first talking about Sam here. Sam's a really good British prospect who's almost 27 years old. He's got great size and length for the division. He's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, and he's got a 10-1-1 pro record. 9 of those 10 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 5 submissions. He's got 4 knockouts. Sam's good everywhere, but it's his conditioning and pace that really set his game apart. He has the attributes that you can't teach. He's got dedication, he's got size, he's got length, and he's got heart. And that combination of attributes is hard to come by and even harder to deal with in an opponent. On the feet from the tape that I've seen, when Sam goes first, it's either with his long jab or with a low leg kick. But he is kind of low volume at range, especially early in fights. He waits to counter, and he did show a lovely step back counter right hook against Felipe Silva that was a clean KO for him. He uses his length well, and he tries to stay at his range where he can use his length, stay safe defensively, and pick you apart. As the fight progresses, though, Sam starts to turn up that volume, and he starts to use his conditioning as a weapon, throwing more output, pressuring more, doubling and tripling up the jab, and mixing in the kicks. This is when Sam starts to find moments in the fight, as his opponents start to wilt under the pressure and the volume. Sam uses his wrestling in reverse. He tries to keep it standing, and his best weapon against wrestlers is his guillotine. He uses a ninja choke or a power ghillie to defend takedowns, and he's got 3 pro wins by guillotine choke, and he's got 2 by rear naked choke. He's definitely a smart fighter. His style complements his strengths, and he hides his weaknesses. And his opponents in Brave Combat Federation were all solid fighters. So he's certainly well-tested on the regional scene, and he's had a good performance versus Vinicius Sensi on DWCS. I love fighters that use pace, pressure, conditioning, durability, and volume as weapons. So few opponents are equipped to deal with that style, especially when it comes from a 6'3" lightweight with a 78-inch reach. My criticism on Patterson is that his conditioning is so good. I would really like to see him start fast. You know, he kind of finds his way into the fight in the first, but I noticed every time the second round starts, it's like a different Sam Patterson. It's like he kind of uses that first round to get the idea of where he's going to be safe and where his opponent doesn't want to be. And then he really kind of turns up that pressure in the second. And that's why he has so many second and third round finishes, is because, you know, he finds his way into fights. And then his opponent, Yanal Red Fox Ashmoz, is a 27-year-old 6-0 professional fighter. He's out of Israel, and he's currently training out of K Dojo Warrior Tribe. The other UFC fighter I know for a fact that's there is Azamat Mirzakhanov. He's had 6 fights in 6 years. He's finished 5 of those 6 wins inside the distance with 2 submissions and 3 knockouts. Yanal is an orthodox fighter, but he occasionally switches stances on the feet. His power hand is the right hand. He usually only throws the left as a way to set up the big overhand right. He doesn't look technical at all on the feet. He just throws everything with 100% power, and everything comes loopy and wide instead of straight down the pipe. But because he throws with such power, you really need to be careful not to get clipped while on the feet against this guy. In the Rizko fight in CFFC, we saw Ashmoz get wrestled and controlled, but every time Rizko got greedy and went for submission over position, Ashmoz would get a reverse. And once Yanal got top position, he did a great job of staying there, and he also did a great job of scoring with his ground and pound. A lot of the tape on Yanal shows his opponents trying to wrestle him, and he does a great job of stopping takedowns and getting back up or reversing position when he is taken down. His ground and pound is very good, and his counter wrestling gets him into a position to where he's able to use that ground and pound. At distance, Yanal has some traditional martial arts attacks, especially with his kicks, but his hands are very basic and predictable. So in summary, Sam is 1 year younger. He's 7 inches taller, and he's got a 9-inch reach advantage here. He's got 6 more pro fights and over 25 more minutes in the pro cage, despite being a pro for the same length of time. Sam's got superior distance striking, as his punches and kicks come straight down the pipe, while Yanal throws all overhands and wide hooks. So Patterson's length is going to be a massive problem for Yanal at distance. I don't see either fighter attempting takedowns, but I think if one guy does, it's going to be Yanal, because I think he's going to be very frustrated here at range. But Yanal's going to have problems closing that distance on the feet. So he might get desperate enough to shoot from way out. And if he does, I could see him walking right into a knee, or he could get his head stuck in Sam's ghillie. And either way, that could be the end of the fight. This is a brutal matchup for Yanal. He hasn't faced a solid level of regional scene competition, in comparison to Sam. He's at a massive size disadvantage. He's fighting on the road in front of a hostile crowd, making his UFC debut. This looks to be too much too soon for Yanal, and I don't think he's earned the right to be here yet. He's a tough kid. He's got solid conditioning and a well-rounded but not really polished MMA game. I see Sam getting the dub here either by decision or with a third-round finish, but I'm going to call Sam Patterson by third-round submission here. But if Yanal can wrestle and wrestle successfully, if he gets on top of Sam and is able to avoid that guillotine, he can absolutely win minutes there. So that's the one thing that worries me here for Sam Patterson is if Yanal is able to get takedowns and get to a dominant position on top, I really think that this could be a good spot for Yanal. Excuse me. Whew. Appreciate that. Wow. Got it. That was a good cough, everybody. But anyway, yeah, I'm picking Sam Patterson, and we're going to call Sam Patterson winning this fight by third round submission. I think it's too much too soon for Yanal. But, you know, I like what I saw from Yanal, especially from his counter wrestling and his top control and ground and pound are excellent. And ring a ding ding, you guys. My guy Abraham Khan with the donation. Your parlay of the Bulldog, Bruno Silva, and Carl Williams hit last week and this week. Yeah, the probability parlay that Brady and I put together this week is the fight doesn't go to decision for Klein versus Herbert, parlayed with the over 1.5 in the Jack Shore versus Makwan Amirkhani fight. So fight doesn't go to decision for Klein. Herbert parlayed with the over 1.5 for Shore Amirkhani. That got us plus 141 yesterday on probability. So check out that parlay. Thank you so much for the donation, Abraham. I truly appreciate you, man. Helping keep the lights on here. Let me tell you something, those donations go a long way, man, when you're breaking down 15 fights in a week and writing up 24 pages of notes for you guys. So very, very much appreciated, Abraham. Thanks for the donation, and I hope this other parlay hits for you too, man. So let's go. Next fight. And I'm a big fan of this Sam Patterson kid, man. I am really looking forward to seeing him in there. He's the archetype of fighter that I really enjoy watching. Love guys with great conditioning. Love guys with that size that you can't teach. He reminds me a little bit of instead of using your wrestling to your advantage like Pierce does, who tries to win minutes JSP, I see kind of Patterson is the anti-JSP, is that he's got that length, that durability, that conditioning, prefers to use that conditioning and pace more with his stand-up than he does where Pierce uses it with his wrestling more. But both of those guys are very exciting prospects to me. But yeah, the next fight, you guys, is going to be Chris Duncan up against Omar Morales. Duncan minus 101. Omar Morales, the favorite, at minus 119, and the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 190 here. So we got the stats up on the screen. Let's first start talking about the Chris Duncan. He's a 29-year-old fighter, hailing from the great nation of Scotland, so he's Scottish. He's got a 9-1 pro record with 8 of those 9 wins coming inside the distance, 7 knockouts and 1 submission. He's definitely a killer be killed fighter. Only one of his fights has ever seen the scorecards, and he was finished by KO in his only pro loss, which came against Slava Claus on DWCS. Chris does a good job of taking the center of the cage and backing his opponent up. He stays low, he throws hard calf kicks, and 1-2s right down the pipe with power. He also looks to mix in the wrestling regularly, and he's comfortable wherever the fight goes. He's a scrappy kid with no quit in him. He will definitely fight for your money. In both of his DWCS fights, he absorbed huge shots from both Slava Claus and Charlie Campbell, and he ate them, and he found his way back into both fights. He wound up getting brutally knocked out by Slava in the second round, but he found a massive straight right against Charlie Campbell after getting rocked twice by Campbell, and that sent Chuck to the upside down. Duncan is the kind of guy who thrives in a war because he can count on his durability and ability to recover, and his powers for real. And if he fights guys who do have that quit in them, he will always find those finishes. Chris is not the kind of guy who's going to be in boring fights, so I'm really looking forward to seeing him fight in the UFC. And then there's Omar Morales, who's a 37-year-old fighter hailing from Venezuela, hence the nickname Venezuelan Fighter. Somebody please tell me where you're going to get that kind of a detailed and nuanced analysis, please. I mean, for free on the internet, nowhere else but right here on Uncle Weezy's channel. That's right. Join the fucking Patreon, will you please? One more guy and need to join the fucking Patreon. I'm giving you beautiful shit like the reason that Morales is named the Venezuelan Fighter is because he's from Venezuela. I had to do the research to come up with that, okay? So join the fucking Patreon. Omar is an inactive fighter. He's fought 14 times in an 11-year pro career. He's 11-3. He's got 7 wins coming inside the distance, 5 knockouts, 2 submissions. Omar's a low-volume kickboxer, and he doesn't have much power. He lands as many distance strikes as he absorbs per minute, about 3.7, and he throws just a little more distance volume than his opponents do. He's landed 1 UFC knockdown, and he's absorbed 3. Omar's been efficient in the grappling exchanges. He's only attempted 3 takedowns, but he's gotten all 3 of them. He's winning 48.5% of the control time positions that he's been in, despite the fact that his opponents have attempted 15 more takedowns than he has, and they've gotten 4 more takedowns than Omar has. His takedown defense is only 61%, and he's allowing 1.37 takedowns per 15, and he only gets 0.59 per 15, but he still doesn't get out-controlled by his opponents, so very efficient in the grappling exchanges. Omar has lost to studs at the UFC level. Giga Chikadze, Jonathan Pierce, and Uros Medic. And his wins are over guys with a combined 11-14 UFC record. And that's Dong Hyung Ma, Gabriel Benitez, and Shane Young are the wins for Omar Morales. I think Chris Duncan falls more into the quality of opponents Morales has beaten more than the ones that he's lost to. So this is certainly a step up in competition for Chris Duncan. In Morales' UFC wins over Benitez and Young, Omar was the busier kickboxer at range. He outlanded Benitez 61-50, and he outthrew Benitez 210 to about 180. And then versus Shane Young, he outlanded him at distance 59-40, and he outthrew 133 significant strike attempts at distance to only 99 for Shane. And he even mixed in 2 takedowns, even though he was out-controlled 3 minutes and 26 seconds to 1 minute and 27 seconds. In his losses to Giga, JSP, and Medic, he was out-kickboxed at range by Giga. No shame in that. And then Pierce and Medic just refused to fight at Omar's pace, and he got blown out of the water by both of them. Omar needs to control the pace of the fight and keep it at kickboxing range in order to do his best work. Chris Duncan's over 7 years younger than Omar Morales here. He's got an excellent boxing. He's got good power on the feet. He's the better finisher by a mile, and he's got durability and heart up the wazoo. Duncan thrives fighting at a pace that Omar doesn't do well at. Omar is the more experienced pro and UFC fighter. He's got 40 more minutes in the pro cage. He's got 6 more UFC fights, and he's got 76 more minutes in the UFC cage as Duncan makes his UFC debut in the UK on Saturday. Omar is the smoother kickboxer at range, and he has a BJJ black belt, so he's shown to be efficient in the grappling exchanges outside of the Pierce fight. Omar has fought a much better brand of competition in his career. I see this as being a close fight. Chris is younger, hungrier, fighting in front of his hometown crowd, and he's at a way different place in his career right now than the 37-year-old Morales is. I think pace and game plan is huge here. If Chris goes to the center of the cage and he tries to win a range kickboxing match with Morales, I think he's going to lose the fight. However, if he comes out pressuring, stays in Omar's face, mixes in the takedowns, and fights at a pace where Omar won't be able to be technical, then I think he wins this fight, maybe even gets a late finish. And I think that that's what he's going to do. I don't think he thinks he's the better kickboxer here. I think he's got to do kind of what he did in the Slava Claus fight and in the Charlie Campbell fight. Both of those fights in DWCS kind of marched forward like a zombie, 8-1 to give one, and really made it difficult for his opponents to be technical. Of course, Slava Claus did piece him up from range, but I just think Slava Claus is a 10 times more dangerous kickboxer than Omar Morales is at this point in his career, just because of the variety of attacks and the body work that Slava Claus does. That's so nasty. But yeah, man, I mean, I think Duncan gets the job done in front of his home crowd. Morales on a 2-fight losing streak. The wins aren't really particularly great. And I think that the one common thing about the wins from Morales is that his opponents are willing to fight at Omar's pace. And Chris's pace is not Omar's pace here. So if this fight takes place at Chris's pace, Chris wins. If it takes place at Omar's pace, Omar is going to win. But I think Chris is going to be the one pushing the pace here. And if he does that, I'm picking him to win by 3rd round knockout. All right. Jack Shore versus Makwan, Mr. Finland, Amirkhani. Let's just get that. Let's save these picks. Let's go to the Fight Center. Fight CAD. And we'll just leave Makwan Amirkhani's apology picture up there for you guys to enjoy while you listen to the dulcet tones of your Uncle Weezy break down this fight. So we've got Jack Shore as a -500 favorite. Makwan Amirkhani, Mr. Finland, +375. Shout out to my guy, Mr. Finland, Jarno Portilla. And we've got the fight doesn't go to decision at -260 here. So this one is one I did not have to watch any tape to break this fight down, because Makwan is one of the most predictable fighters that there is in the UFC. He fights one way and one way only, and all of his fights look the same. But Jack Shore is a Welsh mixed martial artist who trains out of Shore MMA under his father, Shaky Shore. He's 16-1 as a pro. He's coming off his only pro loss. It was to Ricky Simone. He's finished 12 of those 16 wins inside the distance. He's got 4 knockouts and 8 submissions, and he was subbed in his only pro loss via guillotine. Jack is an excellent minute winner. He's got a positive 1.9 distance striking differential with 55% accuracy and 61% distance striking defense. He's spending 47% of his UFC cage time at striking range, and he does very well when fights are standing with his crisp boxing. Almost 53% of Jack's fights take place in control time positions, though, and that's where Jack really excels. He gets 3.66 takedowns per 15 minutes while allowing only 0.81. He's shown 81% takedown defense over 21 attempts against, so he does do a great job of winning the control time positions. He's winning them at a 68% clip thus far in the UFC. His efficiency rating isn't fantastic, but he does a good enough job of being active in the wrestling to make his striking more effective when he's standing, and that grappling becomes more of an easy thing to set up because he's so crisp and fast with his hands. So he's a well-rounded, well-coached fighter with several paths to victory. This might be Jack's debut, or this will be Jack's debut at 145 pounds in the UFC. So we have to keep in mind he will be wrestling with bigger dudes now, and Makwan is a very good wrestler for about 7 minutes. Makwan is owner of one of maybe the best Tapology picture ever, as you can see right there on the screen. Mr. Finland, Makwan Amirkhani, is a wrestler. He's got a 17-8 pro record with 13 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 12 submissions and 1 knockout. Makwan is a first-round front choke or flying knee fighter. If he doesn't get the front choke or flying knee in the first, he's not going to do much past that point. He doesn't have the gas tank to wrestle for the full 15, and his kickboxing is just okay for the UFC level, so he has a hard time winning minutes after his wrestling no longer works. That being said, Makwan can really wrestle early, and if he gets a hold of your neck in that front choke series of his, there's a serious chance you'll wind up sleeping shortly thereafter. Makwan has attempted 76 takedowns in 119 minutes in the UFC cage, and he's gotten 33 of them at 43.42%. He's averaging 4.15 takedowns per 15 minutes, 1.13 submission attempts per 15 minutes, and 0.5 reverses per 15 minutes. So he's very active trying to get fights to the ground, and then he's very active trying to finish them with anaconda chokes once they are there. Makwan has got poor takedown defense, though, at only 38.5%. And even though Makwan attempts 6 takedowns for every one his opponents attempt, Makwan really only wins 60% of the control time positions he's been in. So his grappling efficiency isn't very good. On the feet, Makwan has landed 1 knockdown in 13 fights, and he's got a negative 1.55 distance striking differential per minute spent at distance, and he throws 3.41 less distance strike attempts per minute than his opponents do. So it's no wonder Makwan does have to sell out for the wrestling. He's had a very good level of competition overall in the UFC. So far, his 13 opponents have a combined record of 53-39 at the UFC level. But in Makwan's 7 wins, his opponents have a UFC combined record of 12-22. So he's kind of a can crusher. And to be fair, so is Jack Shore so far. Jack is 6 years younger than Makwan. He's got the much better minute-winning capabilities at distance striking range, and he's way more efficient at winning minutes in the grappling exchanges overall in comparison to Makwan, mostly due to the fact that Shore can stop takedowns and Makwan can't. Makwan is the natural featherweight, so he's 2 inches taller and he's got a 1-inch reach advantage. He's got 8 more pro fights and 7 more UFC fights, and he's got 45 more minutes in the UFC cage. He's got good wrestling and good minute-winning capabilities in the first round of fights when he's fresh and very dangerous for about 5 to 7 minutes. And his front choke series is deadly. Makwan has definitely fought the better brand of competition overall at the UFC level, and I think it was against featherweights, and it was against featherweights while Jack has fought only at 135 so far. Excuse me. I don't think Jack is going to be caught in a front choke or with a flying knee early. So I see Jack easily winning the second and third rounds of this fight and cruising to an easy unanimous decision win over Amirkhani. Interested to see how Jack looks in his debut at 145 pounds against a veteran opponent. So, all right, now that we got that beautiful picture of Makwan that we've all got to stare at for a little bit, let's go back to the picks here. Make sure that it saved the previous picks. Yes, it did. So then we're going to pick Jack Shore to win by decision over Mr. Finland, Makwan Amirkhani. All right. Next fight is going to get us to the main card of UFC 286, and it is kicking off with Marvin, the Italian Dream, Vettori at minus 265 versus Roman, the Caucasian, Dolidze, plus 225. Fight doesn't go to decision at plus 150 for this fight. Let's get the stats up on the screen. And here we go. All right. Marvin Vettori, still only 29 years old. He's a 6-foot middleweight, 74-inch reach. He fights southpaw. He trains under Rafael Cordero at King's MMA. But I think he might have actually moved now to Extreme Couture, which is where Roman Dolidze used to be. But I heard that Roman Dolidze now, shout out to my guy Bridge from the Uncle Weezy Patreon community. He was saying, he said in the Discord today that Dolidze has switched from Extreme Couture to Tiger Muay Thai or Bang Tao. And Vettori has switched from King's MMA to Extreme Couture. So now he's going to be at Extreme Couture, who was just training Dolidze, and Dolidze left. So they're going to be able to craft a game plan for Vettori that will hopefully be able to play to Roman's weaknesses as a fighter. So Marvin already has 25 pro fights, and he's got a 19-6 professional record. He's got 9 career wins by submission and 2 by knockout. Marvin is 9-4 thus far in the UFC, with 2 of those 9 wins coming by way of submission, and the other 7 are by decision. Marvin's a minute winner, not a moment winner. He's a solid at distance striking range. He's got a positive 0.18 distance striking differential, and he's got a 60.66% distance striking defense. He spends 32% of his UFC cage time in control time positions, and he's winning over 80% of them because he averages 1.89 takedowns per 15 minutes while only allowing 0.63. Marvin has faced really good competition at the UFC level, and his 4 losses came to Antonio Carlos Jr. back in 2016 when he was 22 years old, and he has a loss for Robert Whitaker and 2 to the former champion Israel Adesanya. So only the best middleweights can beat Vettori, and Marvin's durability is absolutely legendary. He's got a brick for a head. He's never been knocked down in his UFC career, and he's never been finished in 25 professional fights. Roman, the Caucasian Dolidze, is 34 years old, 6'2", and he's got a 76-inch reach. And he's training out of Bang Tao, but formerly out of Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. Roman is 12-1 as a professional, 10 of his 12 wins coming inside the distance. He's got 3 submissions and 7 knockouts. Roman has never been finished, and his only career setback came against Trevin Giles, and it was a unanimous decision loss. Roman was the ADCC Asia and Oceania champion at 99 kilograms back in 2016. So he had a very good ground game, and he actively hunts for submissions, especially leg locks when on the ground. Roman is dangerous on the feet. He has real power, landing 4 UFC knockdowns in only 7 fights. He's got a 3.36% knockdowns per distance strike landed, and positive 0.23 distance striking differential. And he's got a 60.5% distance striking defense. Roman is also efficient in the grappling exchanges. He's got 9 taken downs, and he's given up 8, but he's winning over 80% of the control time positions that he's been in, despite his pitiful 33% takedown defense. So Roman doesn't care if you take him down because he's very comfortable on the ground, and he'll look for sweeps or sub attempts while he's there. Roman is white hot right now. He's won 4 in a row, and he's coming off 3 straight KO wins over Kyle Dawkins, Phil Hawes, and Jack Hermanson. Roman still hasn't fought the best level of competition overall at the UFC level. His opponents have a combined 26 and 27 UFC record, but his recent form is excellent, and he's getting a chance to take massive steps up the middleweight ladder if he finds a way to beat Vettori on Saturday. So Marvin Vettori is 5 years younger than Roman. That's big. He's got 12 more pro fights and 185 more minutes in the pro cage, 6 more UFC fights, and 154 minutes in the UFC cage. So not only is he 5 years younger, but he's way more experienced than Roman. He's the much higher volume striker and the better range minute winner, and he's fought and beaten the much better brand of UFC competition thus far. Roman is 2 inches taller. He's got a 2-inch reach advantage, and he's the more dangerous and opportunistic finisher as he has more power on the feet, and he's got a more dangerous submission grappling game as Roman attempts 2.12 submissions per 15 minutes while Marvin attempts 0.56. Both guys are efficient at winning minutes in the grappling exchanges, so it'll be interesting to see which one of these guys initiates the grappling. I see this as being a close fight where Marvin throws more volume and wins the minutes on the feet while Roman waits patiently for his moments to present themselves. Roman will need to find a couple here, and since it's almost impossible to finish Marvin, he'll have to try to land the bigger shots and win on damage and control time. I think Marvin's experience, durability, and boxing will make the difference here. I think he's the more tested athlete. He's younger, and he's faced much better kickboxers than Dolidze. So I'm picking Marvin Vettori to win by decision here. All right. Marvin Vettori, decision. We are an hour and 43 minutes in, and we've still got 4 more fights to break down. Thank you, UFC, for a 15-fight card. You kill us content creators when you put 15 fights on the same card. All right. So the next fight is going to be Jennifer Maia, plus 145, going up against King Casey O'Neill, minus 170. The fight doesn't go to decision, sitting at minus 260. Let's see here. All right. Let's go. Let's start talking about Jennifer Maia here after we get the stats up. Jennifer is a KG veteran. She's got 30 professional fights. She's got a 20-win, 9-loss, and 1-draw record with 9 wins coming inside the distance. She's got 6 submissions and 3 knockouts. And she's 5-5 in the UFC, and 9 of her 10 fights have went the distance, with her only finish win coming against JoJo Calderwood, who was recently submitted by the seatbelt of her car. So you really can't say that that's much of a finish. I mean, if you're tapping to the seatbelt of your car, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and Jennifer Maia will be able to submit you. But Jennifer's a solid striker. She's got a negative 0.71 distance striking differential. She's got 35% distance striking accuracy and 60% distance striking defense. She stays busy. She throws 15.27 distance strikes per minute, and she just a little bit more than her opponents do. Jen's a BJJ black belt, but she relies on her opponents to take the fight to the ground in order to use her BJJ because she refuses to wrestle. Jennifer has only attempted 10 takedowns in 10 UFC fights, and she's only gotten 3 in 150 minutes in the UFC cage. So she gets a takedown about once every 50 minutes of UFC cage time. 0.3 takedowns per 15 minutes while giving up 1.51. She wins 39% of the control time positions that she's been in, and her fights are in those positions about 36% of the time. Jennifer only loses to top-level UFC competition. Liz Carmouche back in 2018, Caitlin Chukagian twice, Valentina Shevchenko, and Manon Fiorot are her losses. Interesting Jennifer Maia stats. She's 5-1 when she attempts 0 takedowns, and she's lost every UFC fight that she has gotten a takedown in. So people that are saying like Jennifer needs to wrestle more, that might be true, but when she does wrestle and wrestle successfully, she loses every time. Maia has never went to a split decision in 9 UFC fights, 9 that have went to decision, and her 5 wins are over ladies with a combined 30-36 UFC record, and her losses are against ladies with a combined 44-17 UFC record. The bottom line is Jennifer is in close fights, and this will probably be no different against Casey O'Neill. So King Casey is still only 25 years old. She's undefeated as a pro with 9 wins and no losses. She's got 5 finishes, 2 by sub, 3 by knockout. Casey's been dominant thus far in the UFC. She's 4-0. She's outlanded her opponents 401 to 217 in significant strikes. She's got a positive 5.63 distance striking differential while attempting a whopping 25.23 distance strike attempts per minute with 53% accuracy and 62.5% distance striking defense. She's landing 2.59 takedowns for 15 minutes, and she's allowing 1.29, and she's winning 78% of the control time positions she's been in. The level of competition is still much worse than Jennifer's, so this is definitely a big step up for Casey, but she's shown the full toolbox of skills to suggest she's ready to beat a solid, well-rounded, but unspectacular opponent in Jennifer Maia. I feel there are several paths for her. She can out-volume and outpace Maia at striking range, mix in the takedowns at the end of rounds to seal the rounds, and use her speed and volume to push a pace that Jennifer doesn't thrive at. But Jennifer, is the much more experienced fighter here. She's got 21 more professional fights. She's got 250 more minutes in the pro cage. She's got 6 more UFC fights and over 100 more minutes in the UFC cage. She's got a BJJ black belt, and she's dangerous from her guard when on the bottom, so Casey needs to pick her spots well if she wants to wrestle Jennifer. Jen has fought the much better competition overall, and her wins are better, but not by much than Casey's. Casey's 9 years younger. She's 2 inches taller, and she's got a 5-inch reach advantage here. She's the more potent finisher, having a 75% finish rate in 4 UFC wins compared to a 20% finish rate for Maia in 5 wins. Casey's thrown about 10 more distance strike attempts per minute than Jen does on the aggregate, and she lands over 8 more distance striking per minute than Jen. She's 18% more accurate and has better distance defense as well, albeit against a much lower level of competition than Jennifer Maia's fought. Casey is also a way better wrestler, as she has 5 more takedowns than Jen in 100 less minutes of UFC cage time. Casey's younger, hungrier, she fights at a much higher pace, and she uses all areas of her game, while Jennifer keeps fights close, fights at her distance and pace, and tries to win minutes with her defense and BJJ black belt. This is a stiff test for Casey. We just saw Maia stop Morose's winning streak and make it look fairly easy. And if she can do that to Morose, she can probably do it to King Casey O'Neill. We're going to have to find out how Casey deals with a cagey veteran that is much better overall fighter than the last veteran Casey beat, Roxanne Modafferi, in her retirement fight to boot. I like the Maia by decision line here. I think she makes this fight close and puts the bettors who back her in a position to win. A plus money bet that, you've got a good chance to win is not a bad look, but I have to pick Casey to win this fight by decision. In front of the home crowd, biased judges, I feel her volume can make the difference here. So I'm going to say King Casey O'Neill by decision is the pick. But I actually think a Jennifer Maia by decision bet, which is sitting at Maia wins by decision plus 190 on Bet Online, plus 210 on Bet Rivers. I mean, that's not a bad look. She's always in close fights. And if Roxanne Modafferi can keep it close with Casey O'Neill coming off a torn ACL, had to have surgery to repair that. I think Jennifer Maia, who just beat Marina Morose as an underdog, has got a chance to win this one as well. So, but I'm still picking Casey O'Neill to win this one by decision. Much younger, much hungrier, and much more pace. All right, that brings us to the next fight, which is Gunny Nelson, Iceland, stand up. Gunnar Nelson getting back in there at minus 365. We got Bryan Barberena plus 290. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus 230 for this fight. So this is about as easy as it gets to break down. If Gunnar Nelson gets takedowns and control time, he wins. If Barberena stops the takedowns, he's got a good chance to win this fight. Barberena, piss poor takedown defense. He's seen 99 takedown attempts against. He's given up 45 takedowns, 54% takedown defense. He allows 3.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he gets controlled 27.5% of the time and loses about 75% of the control time positions that he's in. But when the fight's are on the feet, you see Barberena's attempting 15.78 distance strike attempts per minute spent at distance. Gunny Nelson attempts 3.76. That is not a typo. That is not an error. Gunny Nelson throws no volume whatsoever. So while this thing is at distance striking range, Gunny's going to be using his karate style. He's going to have a wide stance, and he's going to be very low volume, and he's going to try to catch his opponents coming in with counter strikes. Barberena is going to be walking forward, throwing in combination, and really looking to put a volume striking approach on his opponents that breaks them down later on in fights. So both of these guys are on the wrong end of 33 years old here. Barberena almost 34. Gunnar Nelson is 34. They're both very experienced at the UFC level and overall. Gunnar Nelson, 75% of his 8 UFC wins are by submission. Barberena's finished 5 of his 9 UFC wins. Gunny 2-4 in the UFC in decisions. Barberena 4-4 in decisions. My bet on this fight was I've got 2.4 units on the over 1.5 rounds, which was at minus 120 when it opened. If Gunnar Nelson was like this aggressive wrestler, I would think that there was a chance that this fight finished in the first or second round. But Gunnar Nelson's only attempted 29 takedowns in in 13 fights. He's getting 1.8 takedowns per 15 minutes. So, it's kind of hard to figure out how this fight finishes because Bryan Barberena doesn't get finishes early in fights. When we look at the prop template here, also available on Uncle Weezy's Patreon right now at the minus 165 for the over 1.5. That's a 62% implied probability. 66% of welterweight fights go over 1.5 rounds. That's a 4.21% price savings. 8 of 11 of Gunnar Nelson's UFC fights have went over 1.5 rounds. And for Barberena, it's 14 of 16. So 22 of 27 of their combined fights, 81.5% have went over 1.5 rounds. And we're only paying 62.26% implied probability on the line. So that's my favorite bet, is the over 1.5 for Nelson Barberena. And yeah, I mean, this fight, I do think that Gunnar Nelson is going to get takedowns and going to get control time, but I don't think he's going to submit Bryan Barberena. I think it'll probably look a lot like the Nelson-Sato fight, where Sato knows that when you're underneath Gunnar Nelson, you have to be very careful about trying to get up and really mind your P's and Q's with your submission defense. And Bryan Barberena has only been submitted 2 times in his pro career in 27 fights, and only 1 time in 7 losses and 16 UFC fights. So yeah, over 1.5 is the bet, but I am going to pick Gunnar Nelson to win this fight by decision via control time. That brings us to the co-main event of the evening. Justin, the highlight Gaethje, plus 190, going up against Rafael Fiziev at minus 225. Azerbaijan, stand up. Kyrgyzstan, stand up. They're going to be dancing in the streets of Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, if Fiziev pulls this one off. But this is going to be a great fight. This is easily one of the best fights probably of the year. Justin Gaethje has never been in a boring fight ever. Justin is 3 inches taller, but it's Rafi who's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. And Rafi's 4 years younger than Gaethje. It's Gaethje who's a lot more experienced, 14 more professional fights, about 4 more years as a pro fighter, 3 more fights at the UFC level, 13 more minutes in the UFC cage. Gaethje's the much better finisher, finished 5 of his 6 UFC wins, and he's got an 86% finish rate as a pro in 23 wins. 3-0 in decisions overall, but he's only had 1 fight in the UFC go to a decision. As a matter of fact, neither one of these guys has ever lost a decision in their career. At striking range, Rafael Fiziev is a amazingly talented Muay Thai striker, and Justin Gaethje is really pretty much just a zombie. He goes forward, he throws really hard low leg kicks, and he busts people up because he's not very technical, but he doesn't allow his opponents to be technical because of the way that he pressures and throws volume. It's going to be very interesting on the feet here. And this fight is going to be a striking match. Make no mistake about it. Whoever wins the striking exchanges in this fight wins the fight. Justin Gaethje doesn't attempt takedowns. Rafael Fiziev has only attempted 5 takedowns in 7 UFC fights, and he's only gotten 2 of them. So in a combined 17 fights in 180 minutes in the cage, these guys have combined for 2 takedowns. So I just don't expect to see either of these guys shooting takedowns. Gaethje's lower volume on the feet. He throws 12 attempts per minute, but his opponents are throwing almost 18. And he's got a negative 0.7 distance striking differential. While Fiziev is positive, negative 0.07, and he actually throws a little bit less volume than his opponents. It's actually Gaethje who has the better striking defense at distance, and it's actually Gaethje who's more accurate. It's the pressure. It's because Gaethje stays in your face that he's so accurate. And neither one of these guys, frankly, is showing good distance striking defense. That's a little bit weird. In terms of the strength of schedule, Gaethje has fought the much better brand of competition, and he's also got the better wins, and he's also got the better losses. But this is going to be an absolute slobber knocker. I have a bet on this fight. It's the over 1.5 rounds, which I took at minus 150. It was another trifecta bet on the prop template. Now it's minus 180 now, but 67% of lightweight fights go over 1.5 rounds, and we're only paying 64.3% here. 75% of Gaethje and Fizayev's fights that have been scheduled for 3 rounds have went over 1.5 rounds. So all of the 8 fights between Gaethje and Fizayev at the UFC level that were scheduled for 3 rounds, 6 of them have went over 1.5 rounds. That's 75%. We're only paying 64% here, so that is 2% savings here, 7.8% savings here, 10.71% savings for a very good trifecta bet, an underpriced over 1.5 line at minus 180, but it's going to be an absolute sweat because Justin Gaethje fights like an absolute madman. I think he's going to come out like he's shot out of a cannon. I think Fizayev's going to have to really worry about checking those leg kicks and not letting his calf get busted up. But if he can maintain range and do what he's done to so many other fighters by using his head movement and defense and, and landing big shots, powerful shots, I think that this is going to be a war, but I think it actually goes over 1.5 rounds and maybe even gets into the 3rd round here. I think it's going to be a great fight, and I'm actually going to pick I'm going to pick Justin Gaethje to win this fight. I think that he's going to put Fizayev into the type of fight that he hasn't really seen before, and that's just a war with a shit-eating wild man, and that's what Justin Gaethje is. So I think that once you take away Fizayev's ability to be technical at distance, that it's going to make him fight a fight that he's a lot less comfortable with. And I think in this case, I'm going to pick the underdog, Justin Gaethje, to get the job done here, and I'm going to pick him to win by 3rd round knockout. That's going to be such a great fight. And then the last fight of the night, the trilogy. My God. Leon Edwards, Rocky, plus 200, pulls off the amazing Rocky-esque upset over Kamaru Usman last time. Usman minus 235 is the favorite. The fight doesn't go to decision, plus money for a 5-round fight at plus 145. Okay, so let's get these stats up here. Leon Edwards, 4 years younger, 2 inches taller, but it's going to be Kamaru Usman with a 2-inch reach advantage. Both of these guys are very experienced, the same amount of minutes in the cage. Leon Edwards a little bit longer as a pro. Usman one more UFC fight and 40 more minutes in the UFC cage. Neither one of these guys finishing fights at the UFC level, really, but they're both excellent in decisions. Kamaru 10-0 in decisions as a pro. Leon Edwards 10-3 in decisions. He's 8-2 in the UFC in decisions, while Kamaru is 10-0 in the UFC in decisions. At range, both of these guys have positive, significant striking differentials. For Leon Edwards, it's 0.43. For Kamaru Usman, it's 0.89. Both guys throwing more volume than their opponents. It's Leon who's a little more accurate and Kamaru who's a little bit more defensively responsible. Both of these guys have power, as we've seen Kamaru Usman land 10 knockdowns in 16 fights. And we've seen Leon Edwards land 5 in 15 fights. So it is it's going to be good on the feet. They're very well matched on the feet, but Kamaru's done an excellent job of winning minutes with his wrestling, as we can see by the wrestling stats over here. 114 takedown attempts for Usman in 273 minutes in the cage, and he's gotten 55 of them, you guys. 48.25% takedown defense, 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's got 97% takedown defense. The only man to take down Kamaru Usman will be the guy standing across from him on Saturday, when Leon Edwards got a takedown in the first round of the rematch and won the first round of that fight as a result of that, getting that takedown. So, but the thing about this matchup is that Usman won all 3 rounds dominantly. of the first fight. But that fight took place a long time ago. In the second fight, Edwards surprised Usman with a takedown, and as a result of getting that takedown, he won the first round. Then Usman clearly won the second, clearly won the third, and clearly won the fourth by getting takedowns and accumulating control time in all 3 rounds, and also winning the striking exchanges on the feet. And then in the 5th round, when Kamaru was playing a little bit of defense, Leon lined up an absolutely perfect head kick. Call it a fluke, call it a lucky shot, call it whatever you want. Kamaru was sleeping, and it was a no-doubter. This wasn't Israel Adesanya, in the 5th round, having the referee step in while he's still moving his head and still perfectly conscious. Kamaru was sleeping after that shin went up. It's upside his head. So there are some questions here. Kamaru's 35 years old with bad knees. He just tasted the only knockout loss that he's ever had in his career in 22 fights and 317 minutes in the pro cage. Coming off that knockout loss, we haven't seen him fight in a year, fighting in front of a hostile crowd in England. We're going to need to see if Kamaru still has that desire, if he still wants this belt back. And that's a question that we can't really answer. How is he going to respond to this kind of adversity? He's seen no adversity in his career in over 10 years, since his first pro loss by submission in his pro debut. I think Kamaru Usman rattled off 20 consecutive wins and defended the belt several times before getting knocked out by Leon Edwards in the 5th round of a fight that he was cruising to victory in. And this is the kind of sport that once that first chink in the armor shows, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Valentina. A lot of people thought she lost to Taylor Santos, and then she goes out there against Grasso, and in a similar way, she lost that first round to Grasso, and then came back and with the wrestling in the 2nd and 3rd and won those rounds, and it looked like she was turning the tide of the fight and going to cruise to victory, and then bam, she gets caught in a rear naked choke. Fight's over like that. And, I worry that at Kamaru Usman with bad knees at 35 years of age, after winning 20 consecutive fights and then coming off a savage knockout, are we going to see the same guy? Is he going to have that commitment to the wrestling? Is he going to be able to have that powerful right hand? I mean, I have to go with Kamaru, though. I really do. He's fought the better brand of competition. He's got the better wins. He is the champion. These guys have been in the cage 8 rounds, and he's won 7 of them. 7 of them. And he was winning that 5th round up until that kick landed. So I think outside of a big shot again, that Kamaru's going to find ways to win minutes with the wrestling just like he always has. And I don't think he's out of his depth on the feet here, as Leon Edwards is just not a particularly high-volume striker. So I've got to go with Kamaru Usman, and I think he's going to win this fight by decision, you guys. We did it. 2 hours and 7 minutes in. An absolutely marathon 15-fight card to break down, but we did it. We got everything we needed. We made all 15 of our picks. So let's go into my tracked bets for UFC 286 so far. We've got 3 over bets here. The first one is the Gaethje Fiziev over 1.5 rounds at minus 150 for 1.5 units. I've got the Shore Amirkhani over 1.5 rounds at minus 130 for 2.6 units. I've got the Bryan Barberena Gunnar Nelson over 1.5 rounds, minus 120 for 2.4 units. I've got Juliana Killer Miller versus Veronica Hardy. Fight doesn't go to decision at plus 100 for 2 units there. And then I've got Lerone the Miracle Murphy to win by knockout at plus 400. That is a 0.25 unit bet. There probably will be some more bets coming down the road here, but I've got to finish up doing my research. Now that we've finished breaking down all 15 of these fights, now that we've finished giving you the tracked bets thus far for UFC 286, that leaves us with one more order of business, you guys. Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week. Who is going to win this week in violent fashion? Who's going to absolutely get the job done inside the distance here? And we've got so many juice to the tits favorites here that I cannot take the coward's way out. I can't give you, Gunnar Nelson at minus 450. I can't give you Jack Shore at minus 550. It's not even responsible for me to give you Sam Patterson at minus 320. That's a very juiced line. Muhammad Mokaev at minus 800. I can't do it. Too wide. Juliana Miller minus 450, minus 500. Can't do it. Too wide. So I've got to find a closer line, but a line where I think that somebody's going to get the job done and get it done violently. This week's Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week is going to be Lerone the Miracle Murphy to shave the ass of Gabriel Moscatino Santos. I don't like this matchup for Santos. I think Santos does really good work in the grappling exchanges. He walks forward. He throws with pace. And I think that he's going to be a very difficult opponent for a lot of UFC featherweights. But I just don't think Lerone Murphy is going to be one of those featherweights. Lerone's got phenomenal conditioning. He's got excellent striking defense and fantastic distance management. Working in a big cage, he's going to have plenty of footwork and angles to deal with the pressure of Moscatino. And Moscatino's striking defense is not good enough to deal with the precision and power that Lerone Murphy brings. And I think Lerone Murphy's going to find a knockout in the first round of this fight. Cash me a plus 400 quarter unit bet to win 1 unit here. Uncle Weezy's ass shaving of the week is on a roll, and we're going to pick the hometown guy, Lerone the Miracle Murphy. If you can't kill this guy with a gun, he's been shot 3 times in the head and lived. How are you going to beat him in the cage, ladies and gentlemen? Nobody's done it yet, and I don't think Moscatino is going to be able to do it after taking the fight on short notice, cutting down to 145 in 6 days, making a flight from Brazil to the United Kingdom, making his UFC debut on short notice in front of a hostile, drunken London crowd. Let's go, Lerone the Miracle Murphy. You guys, I appreciate each and every one of you for spending your Tuesday night with Uncle Weezy. 70 of you still hanging out in here. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, and please, for the love of Jah, join the Patreon. If I sign off and I see that I didn't get 1 new Patreon member during these 2 hours breaking down these 15 fights, I am going to cuss you pricks out on Wednesday during Ask Weezy right back here in the same place on your Uncle Weezy's channel. So check me out here tomorrow, 10 o'clock Central Time. We're going to do Ask Weezy. Check me out 6 o'clock Central Time tomorrow on Pub Sports Radio for the DFS show with DFS by the numbers, myself, Monk, and Gordo. And then I'll give you a greasy 4-leg parlay on this channel on Friday after weigh-ins. God bless each and every one of you. And let's stack cash tickets like flapjacks for UFC 286. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.